It's ImmaLetYouFinish. Court and Amy.
And it's the week where I always think it's actually the week of Thanksgiving, but it's actually not the week of Thanksgiving.
One
and I
week out.
I get very confused, and that's just the way I roll. Confusion. I am in a ball of confusion all of the time. How are you?
I am good. We do have some guests on this show.
Oh, I'm so excited. I put on concealer. None of you can see it, of course, because I am literally concealed. So how would you know? We have the delicious, delightful, and absolutely brilliant Mark Pringle and Barney Hoskyns, who are celebrating the 20th anniversary of their website, Backpages, and their podcast has been going for a couple of years. And Courtney, they are our first international guests. We are going to be talking to them from they're in a foreign country.
Very exciting.
And you'll know what it is as soon as they start talking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of foreign countries, Los Angeles is a weird place, don't you think?
I mean, I have a very interesting thing with LA because it's very pretty when I'm there. I have a shit ton of friends that live there. You know, I used to have to fly back and forth there. Sometimes it'd be multiple times a month. But it was always a place I knew I never wanted to live. It's a weird place to me. You know, it's just, there's a lot of LA rules that kind of different than the New York East Coast rules. It's just a weird place.
Well, we are talking about LA, not because we want to be there, but because we've been championing this underground, undersung young woman artist.
Yeah, she's some
what the
lady.
Hell is her name? What is she? What is her name?
Like,
what is her name?
wait.
Adele.
Addie.
Annie. Adele.
Like
Adele. Yeah. That's
her.
it. Adele.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been trying to, because we're here for the people. We want to support, especially young women artists. It's really hard to get a record on the air these days.
Mm-hmm.
So Adele did a little intimate show, the other night on CBS. Now, and it was filmed in Los Angeles, beautiful location. Now, I will tell you that I didn't even remember it was on until I was on social media and saw somebody post it because, as you know, Courtney, Sunday is 90 Day Fiancé
and
night.
you are very much
dedicated.
You have your moment with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have to watch it in real time because I am watching it via phone with my best friend. So. Mm-hmm. So the little bit I did, so Adele, English people do like LA because the weather in London is shit. So when they can go to LA and get sunshine, they're very excited. I watched bits and blabs of it. And all right, she looked amazing. We know that. She's impeccable. She's gorgeous. The setting was amazing. The problem is that she was it looked like the Academy Awards, like the C list of the Academy Awards. So you had Ellen DeGeneres. Okay, fine, whatever. The Kris Jenner and her whatever boyfriend. It was we all know Adele is very rich and famous, right? We're not pretending she's not rich and famous. She's not going to go to Costco and go, Costco shoppers, come down the aisle 4.
Well, no. Well, what she said was, and she did address this in the beginning, that most of those people there she knew were friends because she knew she had to get out there, but she wanted to feel comfortable and she needed to perform. So I get that.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with it being an audience of like Drake was there and Lizzo, who seems to be like, there's an envelope opening on 12th Avenue and 43rd Street. Lizzo will be there in some outfit that we're not going to care about instead of being someplace in the studio really trying to get her fucking music
Courtney,
together.
You're so judgmental. You want artists to work on their music?
Sure am. I'm going to say that loud.
Yeah.
Stop being annoying and go make a great record because we all loved you and then you got super fucking annoying. It's like I almost forgot that she makes music.
Well, like I said, I only heard it was the preview of the record. She, she sounds great, blah, blah, blah. It was a little disconcerting to have the constant cutting to the famous people. She is dating Rich Paul, who's a really big sports management guy. And I would have liked a little more LeBron, a little less Kris Jenner in terms of the vibe. But the real issue was that Adele sat down with Oprah, who has managed to con I mean, she's not a bad interviewer, Oprah. I should back that up because I'm not saying I don't want like the same people who hate me.
Con.
But she is not the greatest interviewer of her time, but she has very brilliantly positioned herself as that, and bless her heart. But the interview was like dripping with Los Angeles. Safe space, my journey, owning my stuff. I don't want to.
Did you see the moment when they first sit down and she's like, because they're in Oprah's rose garden, and she's like, and Adele says to her, it is almost like an English garden. And Oprah, of course, well, you know, my tea house is right over there.
I know.
A shot. And I'm like, well, yes, of course.
Yes, there you go. Of course she has a tea house. Of course. Courtney, don't you have a tea house? Come on.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. I really love Adele in the interview. I didn't really care about that interview. It seemed like very 1987 sort of big celebrity interview.
Yeah.
Like, I like when Adele is a little more...
hungover?
No, not hungover, but she's more like Maude. You know what I mean? She's more broad. And I like when she's giving that moment as opposed to... I really didn't care about her being divorced. I don't think any of us did. Like, she didn't have one of those public marriages. It's like, great. We just want the album. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, great. That's great.
I appreciate that it's, you know, I mean, if you're talking about an album that is very personal and stuff like that,
Doesn't every artist say this is my most personal work?
Well, Mary J. Blige says that every freaking album.
No, every album with her is, you know, I'm just
her growth. Her growth.
And you know, because I'm
her growth.
Strong, you know,
I'm stronger.
So much, and I'm like, I'm
growth.
Glad you are, but haven't you been Mary J. Blige at this point for like
growing? How much more can you grow? You can only grow so much, and then you explode. Yeah, no, look, we all okay. Now I have to duck when I say this. I've suddenly begun to realize that I like the idea of an Adele more than I actually like it. I like Adele as a human being. I think she's great. Yes, I think she's a lot of fun. And look, this was CBS. This is Oprah. This is, you know, the big Barbara Streisand interview type of thing. This is very mainstream. Yep. She couldn't get up there smoking a blunt and, you know, like kicking it. Okay. Right. I understand all that. It was a little much. Okay. But her songs are all starting. I like her up tempo more. They're starting to all kind of be the same. And she's starting.
It is, yes, it's big. Well, you can tell this is
big.
Now we just know now that this is about to be an album full of emotional, like piano-y, ballad-y tunes. Big.
It's going to be big.
So it's kind of like, if I could be 1,000% honest with you, I was a little bored. Yeah, that's just me. I get bored.
I'll be 99.9% honest with you. I was a lot bored.
And like you, I really enjoy Adele. I think she's great. I was invited to her concert. I did not go because for me, as much as I love her voice, I was like, I understand what it is. I've seen her sing. I don't feel like I need 2 hours of that.
Yeah, there's not going to be a show. Great. Yeah,
there's
not going to be a show.
And it is a show if you like that kind of show. And I have been in the mood for that sort of show. You know what I mean? But I also understand there are people that I love on record that I don't need to see live.
Yeah,
I just know. And I believe she's one of, and like I said, if you've never seen her sing live, you should see her sing live once because she's one of those people who does sound incredible and can sound like her record, right? And that's what most people want. When you go see somebody, you need them to sound like like the records. But like you, I feel it. The idea I love. I'm a huge fan of her very first album.
Yes.
To me, 19 is the album.
And the second album.
I enjoyed the second album, but the first one is the one for me. Like the introduction to that voice, I love those songs. And then, 21 is amazing. That just, did the thing. 25, I thought was the album where Hello is great. You have I like When We Were Young, but at that point, she could have been singing the nursery book and everybody would just be like, I love this.
Well, the record comes out this Friday. I'm sure it's going to be a little blip on the radar. No one's going to hear. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I hope when it sells.
I hope it debuts good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope when it goes gold, they acknowledge our help and give us a little plaque,
Right. When it goes gold in the first half hour of being
exactly. When it goes gold before they can finish saying,
you know what I'm saying? Exactly.
All right. Well, speaking of another woman who really, all right. So Taylor Swift, she's been re-recording all her albums because Scooter Braun took them from her, and that's all fine. Now, a true admission, the only song I never heard Red. I like the song that everybody who doesn't like Taylor Swift likes. The I Knew You Were Trouble song, because everybody likes that song. Yeah, everybody likes that song if they don't like Taylor Swift. I just think at this point, and I understand she's re-recording, I think at this point, when you were 32, 33 years old, and you're up there singing a 10-minute mini series about Jake Gyllenhaal, of all people, breaking up with you when you were 20 and you went out for what, 3 months?
Yeah,
let it go. Let it go.
But I don't feel like I have a different stance on that, right? Because her performing that version of the song is because that was never a single, and that song is one of her most requested and biggest fan favorites. And they knew that there was a longer version because she had talked about it and chopped it down. So to me, it made sense her doing that because she put out the little mini movie, and possibly, you know, all of the fans are attributing it to Jake and because of that period in time. But I will say this about her. Now, she's someone I actually appreciate for a different reason, because I don't really enjoy her singing voice live ever at all. I don't. I think she has a very flat, it's a weird,
thin, very thin.
It's a weird singing voice. But I have enjoyed, and I think I've said this to you before, her adult records, like as she's gotten older. I thought Lover was great. I think Folklore is great.
Folklore is very good.
And I've enjoyed these re-recorded albums. Re-record Fearless Taylor's version, I thought was really good. And I really like this re-record on Red, because as someone who was not a Taylor Swift fan, the one song that she had that I actually really liked was We Are Never, Ever, Ever Getting Back Together. And that's on this. But I just like the vocals, and I like why she's doing it, because I do believe that I understand that people invest in artists, but then I always feel like that should be some sort of 50-50 split. It can't be like, well, I gave you the money. It's like, and I helped produce your record. I said, but it does not work without the artist.
Right. I guess my objection is like, you're not breaking up with someone if you went out with them for 3 months.
No, but you know, I think the fans have put more on to that whole story and have brought that back than her. You know what I mean? Just because of the time period of when the album was recorded. Yeah. And I can remember being in my early 20s and dumb and thinking I was in a relationship or whatever that was. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, you're a little less mature about it than you think you are. You think you're mature. Then you look back and you say, oh, whatever. That being said, she did the performance on Saturday Night Live, and I just remember sitting there going,
she can't sing. Say it.
You've been on tour for a long time.
Can't
You've been
sing.
singing for a long time. What is it with these vocals that just seem like
she can't sing?
That it's just a weird thing.
She's a very good songwriter. She is not
Excellent
a strong singer. She's not a strong singer, and that's it. But you know,
but I like her fight. And I like anybody who's trying to fight for other artists, because you know Ashanti is now doing that. She is re-recording her first album because, well, here's the thing. Those songs get played a lot. And
I'm not laughing because of that.
Irv Gotti owns all of those masters, and he's mad at her, and he's making public statements saying, yeah, I own those masters, and she's trying to basically fuck me out of my money. And it's like, well, clearly she feels like she's being fucked out of her money because it's been 20 something years. And it's like the fact that she has no ownership in her masters. I do wish there was some laws put into place where there comes a point where the artist's work has to revert back to them. I don't think you should be able to just keep someone's work forever and be like, well, I paid for this. You did, but you've made your money 100 times fold. It's like there has to be a way for people who wrote this work and perform this work to get their work back. And I don't believe you should just be able to sell it to some conglomerate of faceless people who are just going to go out and shove it in commercials and movies and do whatever they want with your work, you know? So I will give it to Taylor Swift for that. But baby, when she starts singing, Amy, I'm just always sitting there going, I want to really like you.
No, you don't have to. I mean, you know, she seems like a nice person, but I don't want to listen to her sing. All right. All right. So if Britney is free, and you know what the best thing about this is, Courtney? I no longer have to pretend to give a fuck about her. I'm very glad that the conservatorship has been over.
Yes.
I would like, as the kids say, to see all these free Britney people keep that same energy and direct it maybe at people who, and I'm not discounting what the woman went through. It's sexist. It's misogynist. We know plenty of men who have acted the fool way worse than she has, and that had somebody clamp down. But I would like to see people now turn their attention, if they wish, to the plight of those who don't have the means to do this, to fight things, and who
if you will see, this kind of case has put conservatorship really in the spotlight.
No, it has. And I'd like to see it maybe go into a situation where we now have laws and stuff.
Absolutely.
But, yay, Britney, let's go. Another person who seems like a perfectly nice person, though I think she's a Republican, but whatever. She can't
I don't care about what party people are.
We always go into this.
I do. I know you do. I don't care about that. You know what I mean?
But I'm glad
I know plenty rotten ass Democrats, so I'm not even, I just think it's important that we don't listen. I'm glad that her new team said we have fail safes in place to protect her and her money and her career, but she is making her choices. So that makes me happy, because even if she has some things going on with her mental health, whatever it is, we don't see, listen, Andy Dick just again got arrested for hitting his man with, he's done so much crazy shit. No one has put him in there's so many men.
That's because nobody cares about him.
Right.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean.
No, but I'm just saying,
nobody cares.
The crazy things. You've never heard anybody swooping in and saying, we have to put you, and men get to do all kinds of really bad shit.
Right.
And nobody's like, we need to put you in a conservatorship.
Right.
So even if she were to lose her money, guess what? People lose their money. She made it. She should be able to lose it if she wants to. Hopefully that won't happen. But it's like, I've had a friend of mine say, she's been so crazy lately. And I had to say, well, could you imagine for 13 years, somebody controlling every move of your life? You don't have the keys to your car. You can't do anything. You can't just go have a drink. You can't hang out with your friends. You can't do anything. And you're paying all of the people millions of dollars. I think I'd go crazy too. Well, so congrats, Britney. Take some time. Go chill out. Enjoy your freedom and
stay out of the studio. All right, brief. Let's do the
go back in the studio because I want to
stay out of the studio.
No, I want to Britney.
As for word that the lawsuits are coming in, one more person has died, and
that shit gets worse every day, man. It gets worse because now you're just hearing about things where you're hearing the communications breakdown of people being like, stop the show, and no one stopped the show.
Right.
It's really
we've said.
And then you're hearing that they went out and they had a big old after party at a strip club. And I'm just kind of like, your show got stopped early. And it was like, well, we didn't know what was happening. The show got stopped. There was clearly an event happening. You are the organizer of this event, sir. And I'm looking at Live Nation. How did you not know? Like, the shit was going on. By the time the show stopped, the event was going on for damn near an hour. So I'm very confused. There's a lot of people in trouble. God bless the souls of the people who passed away, including young 9-year-old Ezra, which is just horrific, and people who are still in the hospital. And I just hope they get justice for those families, because that's just... I think you and I both have said it. No one's supposed to die going to a concert. That's supposed to be the most fun. You're not supposed to die going to a show,
All right. So do you want to talk a little about Diana Ross, and we'll talk, or do you want to talk about Silk Sonic with Barney and Mark?
You know what's really funny? I have the Silk Sonic record. I've not played it.
All right. Well,
I am not a Bruno Mars fan.
All right.
I know when I tell that to people.
No, let's talk about them with them though, because they might have an interesting perspective of it. Because I wonder how big if he's an internet. Let's talk about it with them, because I'd be interested.
Well, Bruno's absolutely a big international.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hear what they have to say about it. So
Diana Ross is. This is the great mystery to me with this record. She signs with Decca out of the UK. This is her first album of original material in 15 years. They've done remixes of the first 2 singles, Thank You. The name of the album is Thank You, and I Wish People Would Dance. And then the release week comes, and there's nothing. Nothing. There's no Diana Ross. There's no interviews. There's no special. To me, it feels like something happened, like someone's not happy with the record, or she's just like, I'm not promoting this record. But that makes zero sense because the record is basically dead on arrival everywhere it's come around the world. And for her to have her first album of new material in 15 years, the silence is deafening. And I'm just really kind of confused as to why even make the record if no one's going to really promote it. You know, I've seen some reviews, but just nothing.
I didn't.
We knew ABBA was coming, right? And they had their debut. They debuted at number 1 in the UK. They debuted, I believe, at number 2 or 3 here.
Right.
Right, because Summer Walker got 1 here, so I believe they got number 2. Yeah, that people love that record.
You know what? We have a little time to talk about Silk Sonic, so let me tell you about. All right, so Silk Sonic, for those of you who've been napping for the past 6 months, is Anderson .Paak, great artist, Bruno Mars, and then a bunch of people standing behind them playing instruments. So I like Bruno Mars because I am a sucker for a hook and showmanship and choreography, and he seems like he's having a good time. And he's a former Elvis impersonator. He had me at that. So I think he writes great songs. He writes them usually with his partners. I don't know whether they're involved in this. I enjoy all of that. I am very aware that he is derivative as all get out. You can literally point to almost all of hits and go, oh, look, that's Message in a Bottle. Oh, look, that's every song The Time have ever done. I listened to the record at home, and then I was at someone's house and they were playing it. And I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. But I keep wondering, is this, and there are modern touches. I mean, Bootsy's on it, Thundercat's on it. There's some really good songs. But I keep going, is this an homage record or is this an actual record? I mean, it is lots of artists. Look, Raphael Sadiq does that. People go to certain times. It's very much the 70s, the stylistics, all that. And there are little touches of their humor, but I'm still confused. Is this a record so that old people can go, oh yeah, they're making real music again, which is like, put a gun to my head with that. Or is it's a lot of fun. It just feels like a project. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It feels like a project. So it is a lot of fun. The songs are good. They're obviously having a blast. The videos are very kind of tongue in cheek in a way. But I don't know whether I'm supposed to take it. Does that sound weird? Whether I'm supposed to take it seriously?
No,
do you know what I mean?
I couldn't even click. And like, you listen, the first song that they put out was fine. I just, I get the homage and everything and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's fun.
I just don't give a shit.
All right.
And you would think that I would like a Bruno Mars. He's insanely talented. It's not like he can't.
And so's Anderson. And so's Anderson.
But to me, it's like watching paint dry on a dirty spatula.
I'll give him a little more than that. Yeah, all right. Barney and Mark are now joining us from a land far, far away.
It's like a land that's far away, except it's far and away.
Far and away. It's far and away. And we unfortunately can no longer introduce them as being from Europe because they went and screwed that whole thing up with Brexit, didn't they? But not Mark and Barney. They would never vote for Brexit. But we were going to say we have European guests, but they're from a country that doesn't want to be Europe anymore. Blah, blah, blah. Hello?
God save the Queen.
I hear you laughing.
And I want to say...
Put your pick. No, I am insisting. With
Queen Elizabeth because Queen Elizabeth is going through it, and I need her to be all right because, like, she's had a shit year.
I know, Mark Pringle. I want to see your charming face. Turn your thing. Ah, Mark, you got a haircut. Hi. As you know, I attempted to make. It's 9 a.m. here, and I have a cold. But Courtney always looks good. But I attempted. Hi, guys.
I have lighting though. Like I have a whole lighting rig system because I'm like, listen.
Lighting. And in any moment, I'm going to have a cat jumping into the frame. I'm just warning.
I've already got that.
Oh, Rudy, get over here. Hi, Mark. Hi, Barney.
Hi, Amy.
How are you? Brittany, this is Mark and Barney, my two I talk about you guys like you're
all the time.
You're my you're like my Zayn and Harry Styles. You're my favorite boy band.
No pressure then. No pressure.
Absolutely no. You're my favorite boy band, except that I know you didn't allegedly hit the mother of your girlfriend. So having watched Yolanda on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, I might have hit her too. But that's
or put out like 3 shitty albums. But that's a whole other story.
But that's a whole other story.
Barney,
why would I attack?
Barney, do you know what they're talking about, Barney?
Don't worry, nobody ever knows what we're talking about. That's the joy of this show.
I know. I told you, you're going to have to do 2 things. You're going to have to, we'll get into it. You're going to have to explain why you ate Oasis, and you're going to have to explain to Courtney why sugar babes aren't big in the United States. And that's and then we're done with you.
Well, one, I hate
That's
Oasis
all you require of us.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all we want.
You know, I hate Oasis too, though.
Yeah.
I do not understand the Oasis thing. I didn't understand it when they were out, when everybody was acting like they were the biggest thing on the planet. I was like, it's fine.
All right.
No, it's the other way around. Amy's got to explain to us why she has time for that loathsome combination.
All right, let's dissect me in a second.
And which one is the shitty one? There's one.
Both of them are shitty. Who cares?
There's a real shitty one in there.
Liam's the shitty one.
Okay.
Okay. And then first off, why don't you talk about Rock's Backpages? So I love Rock's Backpages, and I did not know it was your 20th anniversary. That's kind of amazing. So can you explain to our viewers who are playing the at-home version what Rock's Backpages is all about?
Yeah, it must be surprising because we look so young, don't we, Amy? How can it possibly
Barney, do you know
be?
that you and I are 10 days apart? Our birthdays are 10 days
In what
apart.
sense?
You're born. No. Yeah, yours is in metric and mine's in regular. You were born May 5th. Yes.
That is correct.
I'm May 15th.
Wow.
Same year.
That's fantastic.
That's the Taurian bonding thing, man.
I've alwaase
feel
felt
the
it.
energy?
We're both very grounded.
Taurian bonding,
We're very earthy.
Taurian bonding, is that another way of saying bullshit?
Yeah. Mark.
Pretty much.
Sorry, do warn us about use of language on your podcast.
No. Just don't speak English.
We don't.
Okay. This curse. Hey, this is a not ready for prime time.
No, we curse a lot. I'm trying to control it because I know
we're trying to curse less.
We're trying to curse less. We're trying to curse less. All right, so shill away, my friend. Shill away about Rock Backpages.
Well, you're on it, Amy, for a start. In case you didn't know.
I know. I get a letter every year letting me know that once the earnings get up to 110 pounds, I can then get $35 sent to me through a bank in London, and I just go, screw it, it's not worth it.
Yeah, you're really selling it there.
But the fact that you even attempt to pay writers isn't astounding.
We do attempt to pay writers, yeah, which is almost as good as actually paying them. No, writers have been paid by Rock's Backpages.
I have gotten.
I'm going on the record. That's correct, isn't it, Mark?
It is, but I'm not going to say it's much.
All right. We appreciate it.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about money, are we?
No. We're here to talk about
okay. So,
money.
What do you want us to say about Rock's Backpages? Other than, you know what, you should listen to the Lenny K episode that we just did, and he does a much better sales job than we ever could. I mean, he's so lovely about RBP, and he has been on it since almost the word go, like almost 20 years. So we
How'd you come up with the concept?
Okay, Courtney, the concept was this, that I had just come back from 4 years in America as Mojo's US correspondent. Okay. And I was like casting around for things to do. And it was slap bang in the middle of the .com mania. That you're probably too young, Courtney, to remember this. I don't know. But
attempts to not spit liquid.
I'm 100 years old. I'm older than I look.
Psychologically, you may be.
Barney, I'm a little hurt that you did not say you're probably too young, but that's okay.
But I was addressing Courtney. I'll get on to you and how young you look in a minute.
Much.
All right, wait your turn. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pop a lozenge. Go.
But so anyway, look, we'll keep this brief. I I just had this kind of vision. I had a vision, Courtney, of a kind of digital library. I kind of saw a list of articles starting, at the beginning of an artist's career and coming up to the present day. So just like the whole story of whoever it might be, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Otis Redding, Roy Harper, Public Enemy, you name it. Just that was what it was going to be. We were going to try and start with the very first interview that anyone ever did, or the first piece of press that any artist ever got, and then just kind of keep it as up to date as possible, add as many things as we possibly could. And so we started out, I basically had met Mark through Martin Collier, our mutual friend and co-founder, and we shared lots of musical obsessions. And Mark was, well, I'll hand it over to you, Mark. You had actually built websites. We're talking about 1999, Stone Age.
This is really tragic. I built websites. I even got into a thing called Sude's Corner and Private Eye in 1995 for building 1996 for building a website celebrating my daughter's birth. I was that sort of, anyway, I've been building websites mostly for photographers and designers. And Barney rang me up and said, I've had this idea. And we went and had a lunch, kicked the idea around, and within 2 years, I was flat broke. I seem to remember. pretty much.
So that's the story, right? Yeah. Beginning of the story.
And the .com boom. We look. I admit we did have crazed visions. We called it the route to the yacht.
It was the route to yacht rock, actually.
As it turned out, it was the route to yacht. And of course, within months of us getting going on this, the .com bubble
burst.
Which is actually in some ways the best thing that happened to us. We didn't get invested in by some bunch of scalpers. We raised money from family and friends, and so that's probably why we're still here today.
Nice.
I think we'd have gone under if we'd followed that route.
That's the interesting thing about a pivot, because sometimes you'll have a plan and you think this is it, and a pivot kind of takes you to where you really need to go, and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
You accumulate. So I know that you, and I need to talk to you guys, because during the first initial lockdown, when we thought this was going to be 3 weeks, I started cleaning. What a concept. And I went through my files and I went, oh shit, I talked to a lot of people back in the day. I need to send these to Barney and Mark. So we'll talk later, because I found like a veritable treasure trove.
Oh, great.
Of meaningless interviews with important people. You started.
I bet they're not meaningless. I bet they're not meaningless.
Listen, you need that Mark Morrison interview.
We do.
Probably.
Absolutely.
I think I have one. I have one.
Okay.
But
send it over.
Yeah, what's really cool is that you guys, what you're basically doing is setting up a library. I mean, you're setting up all these articles because, for obvious reasons, pre-internet, unless you were an obsessive and you saved everything, where were you going to find these articles? So that's what's a really cool thing about it, is that you can literally go back. If you're a music nerd, or if you're somebody who kind of wants to know the roots of this stuff, you can go back to the 70s and read Ellen Willis and read Lester Bangs and read sort of the people who put this in motion, if you're a writer. Or if you're a fan. So that's super cool about it.
I think for me, the great discovery is the stuff before the serious rock writers.
Right.
As part of that, we deal with writers who we have direct agreements with, or with their executors, their successors. So it's not like just pulling stuff willy-nilly down from everywhere. And we got people like Penny Valentine, who wrote for Disco Music Echo back in the 60s, who went on to write for Sounds. And via her and via other people, we got a whole bunch of writers who wrote for the English pop press in the 60s, who are all forgotten about, mostly women. actually.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's been this fantastic discovery. She died a week or so ago. Maureen Cleave, we got on board very late. She was the person who did the interview with John Lennon where he said the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. Yeah. And I've just got access to a whole shed load of the stuff, including like interviews with Sister Rosetta Tharpe from 1964.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
1964.
Wow.
You know,
I don't think I've ever read an interview
Me
with her.
neither. Me
No,
neither.
I don't think I've ever read an interview
Me
with her. So
neither.
that's pretty amazing.
That should be cool. Well, that'll be coming real soon, won't it, Mark?
that'll be next week, I think it's going.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really what we're all about. I mean,
Yeah.
just to me, that's it. When you talk about being able to read and access and read an interview with Sister Rosetta, then it's sort of like, yeah, okay, I get it. I don't really need to kind of explain anymore what it's about.
Exactly. I mean, I know the other thing is it's about contemporary journalism. I mean, sure, we run more recent retrospective pieces about the history of this band or that band. But really what's interesting is stuff written at the time about the bands when they were going there. And then we got Virus's son, a guy called Philip Elwood, who wrote for the San Francisco Examiner from about, from about 1962, 63, right up to the time he died, which is, I think, about 2000. And it's gold dust because he's going to the Fillmore and seeing the Dead playing with Miles Davis.
Yeah, like the first shows by everyone. The first shows by everyone at the Fillmore. Yeah.
And that's so exciting. I find that so exciting.
Well, what makes it really exciting to me is back, especially we're talking 50s, 60s, 70s, into the early 80s, too. It wasn't like it is now and later where everybody has a publicist and a story crafted. Journalists were really with the bands. They were going on the road with the bands. They were at these shows and just having these conversations. And I think you get a better sense of someone as opposed to the later half where now, there's a publicist that what can you can talk about, what you can't talk about, here's your scope and this. And it's a much more guarded situation with with just a different energy. And when you read all of the older articles, I really do feel like you got more of an insight as to the record, the artist making the record, and just you could feel that time. And it just feels a little more authentic than now where you can kind of be fed like this line and you kind of see that narrative through all of the articles about the same
pre-industry. It's capital I industry, which is really fascinating. And what another thing I like a lot about the site, other than it makes it really easy for me to find stuff I've written that I forgot I wrote, and I'm like,
that's the main object. That's the main point of it, Amy. That's really why we built it, so you could more easily find your articles.
Find her live review of Barney, as in the puppet character. That's when I'm going to post soon.
Okay, as her machine. I think she froze again.
She froze.
She's frozen.
She's frozen.
Her machine.
Well, let's
do that.
You know what? Let's just take advantage of the fact that Amy's frozen. Right. But Courtney, you're absolutely right that in a sense, journalists back in that era were almost like embedded in the lives of bands and scenes. And, it led to much more of a kind of a real experience of kind of getting backstage. The best writers took you backstage with them,
right?
And now it's so much more kind of orchestrated and controlled. So, I certainly for me, growing up and reading, particularly like The Enemy in the 70s. You didn't have this sense that there was kind of a PR hovering in the wings. Right. You went on the road with these bands,
right,
through the reporting and interviewing in that paper and other papers. Those were Enemy, Melody Maker, Sounds, etc. were the things we had more access to. We didn't often see American publications, but we grabbed them when we could, didn't we,
right.
Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rolling Stone was freely available in the UK. Much harder to get hold of Cream, Crawdaddy, Fusion, and so on and so forth. Rolling Stone, I think it was actually even printed in this country, the British edition, and a lot of people got it. I got my copy of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars as a giveaway with my subscription to Rolling Stone.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we've spent a lot of time kind of catching up with stuff like that we didn't have access to. I mean, I've spent time in the States over the last 40 years. And therefore, I mean, I have read a lot of great American journalists. I mean, one of the things that was helpful was that I had spent time in the States, and I'd had these 4 years like corresponding for Mojo. Hello again, unfrozen Amy.
Maybe I should cash those checks you send me so I can buy a new
yeah, we'll pay for better bandwidth.
Yeah, okay.
But so I knew a lot of American writers. Right. This was a helpful thing. Yeah. You know, I got to know quite a lot of writers in LA and in New York and all over America, actually. So when Mark and I got rolling, we were able to bring in, you know, about like 10, 15, 20 American writers and about a similar number of UK writers. And we got the ball rolling that way by just getting, I mean, as I mentioned, Lenny Kaye earlier, just the fact that we were able to say we had Lenny Kaye on board and Charles John Murray and Penny Valentine and so forth. It just meant that other writers who might not have taken this that seriously, like, what is this? Some little kind of hobby that you're starting, were kind of like, yeah, I want to be in that club, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It gives it a legitimacy to people, right?
Yeah.
When they see names that they're absolutely familiar with, they're like, well, I know that person and I know that what they do. And if they're there, I want to be there.
I think I've told you guys this. I mean, and it just explains so much about my completely fucked up romantic life.
Can you just say that again, Amy?
My completely fucked up romantic life, and why men find me fascinating and yet want nothing to do with me is because when I was in high school, when I should have been reading 17 magazine or how to put on makeup and be normal, I would go to the library and read Crawdaddy and Cream and Rolling Stone and be like, I want to meet Charles M. Young one day.
Yeah.
And he was like super cool. He was super cool. But I was like, I wanted to be a rock critic.
As well as a rock goddess.
Yes. But
which is obviously how we think of you.
Oh, thank you. Well, but I thought it was like so cool because I was like, I like music. I like to write. You know, I can write about music because you don't really need to know how to write.
Have you had any writers say no to you guys?
Yeah. Robert Christgau is one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, only because he's sort of got his whole, everything online anyway, I think,
some of the big boys, partly because a lot of the big boys wrote for Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone took their copyrights even if they were freelancers.
Oh, wow.
So go Jan.
I mean, ruthlessly. I mean, it is extraordinary. Of course, that wouldn't stand up in a court of law because they didn't provide anything that you could get copyrights for, which is things like pensions, healthcare, and so on and so forth.
Right.
But a lot of that, people like Cameron Crowe came on board, and then I think decided that he'd probably be able to make more money looking after his own catalogue, which I understand.
Right.
But he's been a big like booster of ours. And in our recent 20th anniversary campaign, he furnished us with a very, very lovely quote. I mean, he's been nothing but generous towards us. And we're hoping to get him on the podcast. I mean, he's an all-around decent guy. And but I mean, very few, more and more people have come on board, and we do have a lot of the Rolling Stone greats, including, people don't think of Lester Bangs as primarily a Rolling Stone writer, but obviously he did a lot of stuff for Stone. And we have some Lester Bangs on RBP as a result of John Morthland and Billy Altman kind of giving us the okay.
Billy is the nicest guy. And Billy is like a scorekeeper for the Mets. That's what he does.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
No.
That's very rock and roll.
That's like his side gig. He's a scorekeeper for the Mets. Oh, the Mets are fantastic. Baseball, Mark.
I know that.
They suck. They suck.
It's
but
called
they are
baseball.
They suck.
And I love them because I'm a Queens boy, and
they're the first team I ever saw. First team I ever
win.
saw was a Mets game.
Isn't that the sport we call rounders, Barney?
Whatever. Why you got to ruin everything for us? Okay,
I
you got to ruin everything for us. It's the World Series, and we're the only country that participates. Just remember that we are the world.
You are the world.
Which is ironic, given that other nations play baseball. I mean,
whatever. Okay, whatever.
Japan plays baseball. A lot of Central American, Latin American countries play baseball.
Huge, huge.
And do they get to play in the World Series? The fuck.
Mark, if you're going to interject this conversation with facts, we're going to have to ask you to leave right now.
Because we're talking
fact-free zone.
Because we're America. We don't deal in
We're in America,
anymore.
for God's sake.
We just say it and then we scream it on television.
And then we scream it loud enough and we get you to believe it. Remember, Mark, it's De La Soul.
Who cares
not De La Soul. For Christ's sake. All right.
It's getting heated.
I just want to say, okay, if you listen to us, Courtney and I are obsessed with Pet Shop Boys, and that Neil Tennant interview you did was okay. Wait a minute, we're gonna have a moment. Okay, that Neil Tennant interview you did. I mean, I've listened to a lot of your stuff, but that one just because he is kind of dreamy. I mean,
he was lovely. He was an absolute joy. I mean, we all basically fell completely in love with him. We had him like we had you in our terrible little office
in the closet,
literally in the closet. We were in the closet with Neil. Definitely, Neil was going into the closet. And we were coming out of the closet.
And he was just a delight. He was just a delight. He was funny. He was self-effacing. He was so not up his own arse. It was unbelievable. Just brilliant. Possibly my favorite. Possibly, aside from, of course, Amy, you being a guest, I'd say that Neil is quite possibly my favorite guest we've had.
Well, you love the one that he's a writer, right? He has that background and writing for pop in music. And then, to me, I say this all the time about them. They are, to me, the top dance act in the world and have been for decades. They have always been on the cutting edge of dance. They've always written really smart dance. They have worked with every fierce producer along the way. And they are still making, to me, really important, great music. I just love them. I love them. I love the artistry. They're just
two of the best live shows.
They're just and I have seen everybody live.
He's never seen them. I've seen them 4 times. They're amazing.
The other thing about Neil is he's such good. I love his writing for smash hits. Primarily. And it's sort of writing you don't get in America. I mean, it's a very, very English style of thing where basically you can make as many jokes about the band you're interviewing as you like. You can be as sarcastic, piss-taking as you like. And he's an absolute exemplar of that. Some of his stuff, Smash Hits, is the funniest writing you'll ever read about anything. And what I find really amusing is a lot of American acts, when I came over to England first time around, they'd get a lot of praise. And then they'd come over the second time and get torn to pieces by the English press. And I love reading interviews in the American music press where they're moaning about the English music press. They go, oh, geez, those guys. Patti Smith, for example, got savaged. Radio Ethiopia got absolutely savaged. And we got an interview with dear Lenny. Sandy Robertson was walking down the King's Road in Chelsea interviewing him. And Lenny has spent the whole interview moaning about how the English rock press had turned on Patti.
Well,
the English
but you guys made
the American press
stars
too. It's so funny. It's like everybody gets really sensitive about that. Like every artist that I've ever worked with, I'm like, my advice is always, I'm like, don't read any of it. I'm like, don't read. No, really. I'm like, don't read the good or don't read the bad because that's going to get in your head. I was like, and it's only one person's opinion. I was like, so if you want to believe all the good, it's hard to not believe all the bad. Sure. So sometimes I'm like, do your interview, be great, but don't read it yourself. Yeah.
Don't read the good. Don't read the bad. Don't go on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then
even pre-Twitter, but I mean, you've made it as a music critic, especially like in the hip hop world where you have like, I don't know, Sticky Fingers, like not Sticky Fingers. Who's the idiot, the real idiot in that group? Fredo. Step to you on the street and call you all sorts of names. I felt like I had accomplished my goal in front of my child. I thought that was nice really classy. Yeah. I was like, that's good.
Real classy.
Yeah, it was real classy. I was like, and you are. but you guys made the Strokes famous, and you will never live that down. Not
That's
you
true.
guys, your country elevated that
Yeah,
band.
but they had a moment. They did have a moment.
Yeah, but it's a moment. It's
UK made Blondie famous. They've always been way more famous there than here.
Well, the UK made Jimi Hendrix famous, you know, and it doesn't get better than that.
Okay, I guess.
And Sparks.
Yes, that is true. The band that I grew up thinking they were British. When I found out they were two Jewish guys from LA, it was like myth shattered. Myth shattered. All right.
I just need to talk about the Sugar Babes for a minute. Because
why do you think some bands don't translate?
They came here, they worked with Dallas Austin, had #1 hits over there with him. Why do you think that did not transfer here? Because they did try to work records here, and they've had like Round Round, I believe, was either #1 or #2 on the Billboard dance chart. And they've had like 1 or 2 others that made the dance chart. But I think like Push the Button maybe got a Billboard Hot 100 position at like number 99 or something. Why do you think that did not transfer over?
I'm too old to answer that question. Barney,
I'm almost too old to answer that
Oh
question.
my God. Make something up for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I'm going to make something up. That's exactly what I'm going to do. It's going to be a series of alternative facts.
Thank
you. I think the short, like, made up answer is that I think, and it's not just, like R&B acts, but in America, there is a kind of, there's an ingrained belief that we can't do certain kinds of music. I know there've been a lot of big acts in America, but big British acts that have translated there. But I sort of have felt over the years that when it comes to R&B, to soul, to funk and so forth, we're not taking, it's like we just don't really have it in our DNA to do it convincingly. Even if we think we've done it quite well sometimes. I mean, if you think about like Brit Funk and those groups, I mean, we were quite fond of them, and some of them made a couple of decent records, but the truth is they were not as good as their American equivalent. I don't think. Mark might disagree, but I just don't. And I think the Sugar Babes made some really good records, but were they? I mean, are they as good as Destiny's Child records? Probably not. At the end of the day, I don't know.
And I also think, I mean, your point is really, I mean, we do tend to be very proprietary towards stuff, and our Black music is coming out of fundamentally a church kind of tradition that you don't have there. It's American Blacks as opposed to West Indian. We don't have that West Indian influence at all. But on the other hand, the UK soul thing among a very small but very influential group of people was huge here. I mean, in certain pockets of certain neighborhoods, it was everywhere. So,
but they are pockets, aren't they? They're pockets.
I'd say if Terence Trent D'Arby hadn't lost his marbles, I think he would have probably become a major star in America. I think he would have done it.
He's American.
Well, he's American. That is a very, very good point.
Which a lot of people did not realize. Though.
Well, he made sure he didn't realize it.
That he was from the UK.
But but Barney's point's broadly true. I think that's right.
It's really interesting to me that somebody like Lewis Taylor, who I'm fairly obsessed with,
and you guys turned me on to him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a white Jewish guy from North London, who I know. I have met quite a few Americans who really revere him, and he's been written about in the R&B press over there. You guys seem to get him almost in a way that we don't get him, or a lot of people here. Is it
about radio? Is it as much that actually to break kind of R&B acts, you've got to break Black radio, and Black radio in America is very conservative.
It's a tough place with a small playlist that's playing a lot of the same records, because Black R&B radio, unfortunately, here in America, is not even really playing a lot of Black artists here who make primarily R&B music. And a lot of them feel very tuned out at radio, and where streaming is really good, The difference is if you get on the radio, you see the difference in your streaming numbers, right? Because, I always tell my friends here in New York, I'm like, yeah, we always say we don't listen to the radio much. I'm like, but we're not in our cars the way other people are. Like some people here are in our cars, but in all my other places, everybody gets in their car to drive to work, to drive to school. So they are still turning on the radio. And it may be Sirius XM, like a lot of cars that come with satellite radio, but it is still radio. Then you go into work and you might be listening to your Spotify, you're going to listen to those songs. So it really is a driver. And Black radio in the US, honestly, I feel has failed Black artists in this country.
For sure.
Certain people are getting played. Like right now, Summer Walker just put out a record here. I know it also came out in the UK. It's #1 here. But there's a lot of R&B artists that put out records who are not getting nothing, you know what I mean? It's like you really have to search and find their records.
But I know for me, like as a fan of, I kind of Anglophile in some ways. As a fan, it was very disappointing for me, but I understood why. Where it's all of a sudden in the mid-90s, you had British artists doing their approximation of an R. Kelly record or that kind of sound. I was like, we do that better, guys. So why don't you do what you do?
Yeah.
And let us, it's like that is kind of our lane. And R. Kelly's issues aside, he was the king of that lane at that point. Why are you guys doing that when you bring something so different? I
always thought one of the great paradoxes in hip hop is how Slick Rick could be big in America, who rapped in a London accent, which is absolutely fantastic. But in those days, the London rappers all rapped in America. All wrapped in American accents, which is just bogus. And I thought the great irony is there was Slick Rick, a huge star in America, but rapping in a totally South London accent, which I kind of really liked.
I mean, you have to take into account that most British popular music has been created in response to imported American sounds. There's just no getting away from that. There are obviously genres like folk rock, which predate rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and so forth. And I, for one, am very proud of that music, because I think we've made incredible music. Bands like Fairport Convention, and acts like John Martin. That is very, very British music, Anne Briggs, etc. That tradition.
Well, it's a mixture. It's absolutely a mixture.
It is a mixture.
John Martin took from both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, of course, he did.
Fairport's did, but it was identifiably a sort of English product.
Yeah, so there is that, and so there is music that's identifiably British, but pretty much everything from Lonnie Donegan onwards, or going back to the Chris Barber band. I mean, it's all been in response to American music.
Yeah. Particularly African American music.
So we're always kind of imitating that music.
Yeah.
Well, would you agree? I mean, there is an imitation, and sometimes you guys show it way more respect than we did. I mean, it's the oldest story in the world that a lot of white kids got turned on to a Native American blues artist because the Stones were doing it. But there's also sometimes a little bit of fetishization that you guys do with Black artists.
I mean, the Stones, etc. in the early 60s, it was this kind of just love affair with America, and particularly like the Deep South and Chicago. And what you're talking about is a generation of boys primarily who grew up in very boring suburban towns in the 50s, who had very little to dream or fantasize about. And then they heard Muddy Waters, and it just blew their minds. And, we would talk. Yeah.
And there are other factors, like, we forget that the United Kingdom was basically a large air base for America, right through from the Second World War through to the end of the 60s.
Yeah, this is a really important strand. In the story.
So there was a large number of Black servicemen in this country, and they had to go somewhere, and they wanted records they played. So they go to the Flamingo and these sorts of places in Soho, places like people like Georgie Fame and the Blue playing to them, and they were playing R&B because that's what the audience wanted to listen to.
Gino Washington, Johnny Johnson, the bandwagon. I mean, they really were catering to these servicemen who'd come into Soho on a Saturday night and wanted to hear American music. So, I mean, it's such a symbiotic relationship, Amy, Courtney, isn't it? I mean, it just is. There's no, but I think at the end of the day, you know, we have to put our hands up and say we've been more imitative, really. I mean, having said that, without what the Stones and others did in the early 60s, the blues rock boom would not have happened in America in the same way that it did.
Popular music as we know it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, the fact is that the people like the Stones and the Beatles, I mean, you know, people like the Beatles who would be buying records off dockers who were getting them off boats in Liverpool in 1961, 62, you know, were taking this stuff. And the Beatles also white stuff like the Everly Brothers, huge for the Beatles, you know, were taking that sort of stuff and doing something really quite different and new with it. You know, so that we weren't just, it wasn't just
it wasn't like an imitation. Yeah, it definitely wasn't like
it wasn't a pure imitation.
Yeah, it wasn't an imitation.
The roots of it were pretty much always American. So I think
of course,
that just has to be acknowledged. There's no getting away. So when you get to a group like Sugar Babes, it's hard not to see them as primarily imitative. They're trying to make American music,
right?
And sometimes succeeding and sometimes not.
Right.
Well, that's like, I finally saw, and then I do have to discuss the pressing question, but I finally saw that Jessie Nelson video. Okay. So first off, Courtney and I have discussed for weeks that we thought that she was like, why is this old woman, this old Puerto Rican woman in the group with these girls? Who is she? We're confused, but whatever. That's
at the
cool.
best of times.
Yeah. And then I watched the video and I was like, okay, first off, having Puffy in your video is like dated by 20 years.
I was like, is this 1998?
Yeah,
like,
where did
what happened? You fell asleep.
Yeah.
You fell
Your
asleep.
audience doesn't even know who this old man is.
Like,
why is your dad in the video?
Why is this happening? This song is dumb. This whole thing
the song is dumb. You're literally like wearing, it's like, oh my God, did someone not say to you, even if you're a black artist, you shouldn't be wearing that shit? And with your lowriders and your homies, I'm like, bitch, you're British. You have no homies. You have no lowriders. You don't right. Come on.
Actually, Mark and I do have lowriders.
Yes.
Oh, do you?
I can't believe you didn't notice them. When you came to our office.
That's because we didn't drive when we went out to lunch. We walked across the street.
Oh, next time, maybe.
Can I say, I always find it interesting, though, the ones who get to drip through in different points in time, like Misha Paris, right? Misha Paris. Now, she didn't really sell a bunch of records here, but she had her record deal here and the albums came out and people like me who really loved her, we bought those records. So there were the ones who got to come through, and even though you could hear like influence of maybe American soul, I think she's got it. She has that voice. It's just, she could really sing, and it just, she could perform, and there's something about her, right? But like you said, varying degrees of success. The first album for her was the most successful. Then you had Contribution, all the other records, and they didn't really chart, but they put them out here.
How familiar are you with things like grime?
More and more so.
Yeah. Well, that is
that's
very
British.
Yeah,
that is absolutely
incomprehensible because of Top Boy. Because I watched Top Boy, and
I know from Boy. I remember like So Solid Crew.
Yeah,
and all those kids, you know.
I mean, this is proper urban English British music. Yes, it's absolutely steeped in hip hop, but it's also steeped in all kinds of other stuff, like sort of dancehall, reggae, and so on and so forth. It's all merged together. Yeah. It's also guys on their laptops who don't know one end of the musical instrument from another. This would send our dear friend Nelson George into fury because he particularly pointed out how much he disliked that. I love it. I mean,
Nelson doesn't like grime?
He doesn't like music made by non-musicians on computers.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's like an entire genre of music.
well, I don't. We may be being slightly unfair here.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But the thing about grime is that it sounds like London.
Yeah,
you know, I listen to that. That sounds like the city I live in. You know, in a way that hip hop never does.
But it still would not have happened without American hip hop.
No, I agree. You know, I agree.
So I mean, I don't think it really changes the point, but it does something new with it, just like the Stones did something new with American rhythm and blues. You know, so it's a conversation that goes back and forth across the Atlantic Ocean.
And dance music, dance music. You've got house coming out of Chicago, techno coming out of Detroit. And those have had a massive influence on British music in all kinds of ways, where they don't sound American at all now. It's been so sort of sculpted and worked on and knocked around that it sounds like a completely different beast. And the problem with Sugar Babes, they don't sound like a different beast. They sound like an impersonation of the real thing.
Right.
What? All right. I'm just curious. All right. Give me one sentence why you hate Oasis so much. First two albums. That's all I'm going to give you. First two albums. That's it.
Okay. So
did somebody hurt you, Barney? Did someone hurt you?
What? Did Oasis
Did they hurt you?
No, they haven't hurt me yet. They may hurt me, after whatever the hell I say, and I don't, I suppose, in one, probably long sentence, be careful what you ask for. My feeling about Oasis is there was really not, I've always said they just microwaved old Beatles riffs, basically. They just warmed over some borrowed Beatles riffs and presented it as something original. And it just was entirely unoriginal. It was also like half-assed and dumbed down and willfully kind of stupid. Is my feeling. It
Other than that, Barney.
I was about to say he doesn't really have an opinion on
it.
Barney.
Also, entirely unsexy. Entirely devoid of
oh my
sexuality.
God, girls,
now,
listen. He's an asshole, but Liam was cute.
Okay,
he's an asshole.
Amy.
Who married which one married the all?
Liam, he married all
married everyone.
Okay.
Everyone.
Amy married Lynn.
Amy.
No, he's an asshole. He's a fucking asshole. He's the type of guy that you lend money to and he never comes back. He's a fucking dick. But I will say that Noel Gallagher on talk shows is hilarious.
Oasis's audience was almost entirely male. 2 weeks apart in 1995, I saw Blur and Oasis. Blur, the Wembley Arena, Oasis at Earl's Court. Blur's audience was very mixed. A lot of women in that crowd. Oasis, it was like the Nuremberg Rally on Special Brew. It was entirely tins of high strength.
I'm going to be forced to listen to Champagne Supernova. All right, I will defend Oasis.
It's just not great. It's just not great rock and roll music.
Oh my God! You know who also loves Oasis? Michael Gonzalez. So there, I just love the bigness, the anthemicness. I know that they're idiots. I know all the backstory. I know that there's just something. I must listen. You guys have been fooled into thinking that I'm way smarter than I actually am. I like hook. I'm not a deep thinker.
Good. They're not even great hooks.
No, they're not.
There's nothing there.
I'm not going to win this argument. All right, I'm not going to win this argument. Stop. I'm not going to win this argument. It's 3 against 1. I feel triggered and bullied.
You brought it on yourself,
I know.
lady.
What do you guys
invited it?
Well, you could put on the new Adele and go to sleep.
I know.
Good point.
I like Adele much more than I like Oasis.
Yes, I love Adele. Adele is beautiful. I love her first album. Yeah. I love Adele.
That's special, though.
You always know that when you're going to get a great Adele song and it's going to be big, but it's like, okay, I know what I'm getting with Adele.
Yeah.
Are you still going to listen to her when she releases her album called 45? When she's turned
75. I'm hoping to be alive when she releases
she's
75.
Like the 7-Up of singers. Like every 7 years, she'll put out a record and it'll be her
very
age.
Smart.
Okay,
very
I'm going to wait for her
very
midlife
smart.
crisis record because that's the one when everybody decides I feel like dancing, so this
I'm
is my
gonna
dance album.
I'm going to be really contemptuous, and my huge regret was that she lost weight. I know that sounds a terrible thing to say, but it's like one thing was marvelous about her when she first emerged is she was a normal looking woman, with broad hips and
she could have been in a Dove ad. She could have been in a Dove ad.
And now she's obviously spent God knows how long losing this, eating that. And it's like you're just doing what the business demands of you in the most depressing sort of way.
All right, I will defend her because I agree in a way. But first off, for white Americans, she's still overweight. Secondly, if you're not a size 0 in this country, you're still overweight. Secondly, if she wanted to do it, she did it. I think
but her first record was a huge hit in America.
It was.
Yeah, it's true.
When she was still, overweight.
Maybe she just wanted to get healthy. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to fault anybody.
There is that.
I will not fault anybody for wanting to get healthy.
Some of us respond to stress by not eating. Some of us, Amy raises hand, responds to stress by eating. So nobody lost weight during the pandemic, right?
I did because I went vegetarian. I remember that whole year when I was like, I'm not eating anything, and it was really good. But I was really angry a lot and just yelling at people on the telephone because I was hungry. I've been a vegetarian.
It's another episode, Courtney.
And chocolate is a vegetable. That's a whole All right. Story. What are you guys listening to? What are you guys reading or listening to these days?
Oh, reading?
Or reading, or because I'm going to talk about a book because I haven't listened to anything in a while.
Did you? I thought you said, "What are you guys reading?"
Reading or listening to anything you want to talk about, just current stuff that you're into, or not current stuff.
Well, I'm reading a book by a compatriot of yours, Timothy Snyder, who's a professor at Yale or Harvard. It's a book called The Road to Unfreedom. He wrote a book called On Tyranny, and this is a follow-up to that. And it is it's about primarily about Putin and the invasion of Ukraine, but it's really anyway. It's very, very interesting on the new autocracy and what's happened in the world in the last 6 years. So I'm really, really fascinated by that. He was recommended to me by one of our other podcast guests, James Fox, who essentially wrote Keith Richards' autobiography. And
that was a great book.
He's a great list, and he said you've got to read Timothy Snyder. So what else? What have I been listening to? I'm looking at various things that I put on a playlist, and what have I liked? I liked about half of the second Billie Eilish record a lot. And I liked the Laura Mvula record quite a lot. Yeah. I mean, she seems to just get kind of overlooked, but
we talked about that on the show.
There's Black Radio. There's Black Radio.
She doesn't fit into a neat slot.
And you can see they listen to this music. And what we said about this last record is this is a great record, but I was like, well, this is not going to get any Black American anything because we don't know what this fits in here.
Yeah,
which is a shame.
Yeah, there's a track called "What Matters" that I just loved, and then there's a really really great track called "Church Girl," which is about her own gospel roots, I think, and they're just fabulous. Very well, quite Jam and Lewis influenced actually. When we had Nelson George on the podcast, Jam and Lewis had just released their very first album as Jam and Lewis. So I think you guys talked about that too. In fact, I heard your episode on that. So we were in sync there. Yeah, I love that. And Mark and I go way back as Jam and Lewis fanatics. So it's interesting to hear their influence in things like Laura Mvula. Do you pronounce it Mvula? Mvula must be.
Mvula.
We're American. We don't know.
Church Girl is a great kind of little homage to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
We pronounce it Greenwich, so clearly we don't know anything.
We pronounce it Greenwich.
Oh, I thought you said Greenwich.
We don't say Greenwich.
Okay. Where I'm staying, I'm about 10 minutes drive from a place called Berkeley, which you would call Berkeley. So
what's it spelled? How's it spelled?
It's spelled exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Oh.
I've been I'm trying. I read a lot of. I've been reading a lot about Trump recently. Just about every book that's come out about the last year.
Don't
of the
do
Trump
it.
regime. No, because it is fascinating. I find it endlessly fascinating. In terms of reading about pop music, I generally don't do it because my day job is reading about pop music.
Right.
So the last thing I want to do.
Yeah.
But I did, because everyone was saying it was really interesting, get the Tommy James book about myself and the mafia, and it's terrible. I mean, it's a really interesting story. He claims that Tommy James and Shondells were.
I was going to ask you if it was Tommy James and the Shondells. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
One of the biggest bands in America. Well, I've never had a sense of that. I mean, he claims that their records were banned in England after they refused to come over to do a specific television event, which may or may not be true. But his ego is extraordinary. He just, it's like everything that happened in the 60s, early 70s rock and roll doesn't exist. It's all about him versus, whichever other pop act it was. And he's literally in bed with Mo Levy, the biggest gangster in the music business history. And
not actually in bed, I think.
Metaphorically.
That's an image.
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically. And it's extraordinary. He knew everything that was going on, and yet he never left him. He basically, Roulette Records were Tommy James and the Shondells for about 5 years. There's no sort of self-awareness in this book whatsoever. And it's a dismal read. It's ghosted by someone, God knows who. In terms of music, I mean, the only pop music I've really liked these last 3 years or so is Lizzo, who I absolutely adore. I don't really listen to
the first half of our show when this comes out.
Okay.
I loved her when she was putting out her independent singles. I really dug the first album. I need her to get focused and go in there and she's become so fucking annoying. It's like that I forget that she makes music. It's like, you need to go someplace, concentrate, and make a great album.
Put on some pants and make an album.
Well, maybe because it's not shoved down our throats so much. It all just sounds great to me at the moment. I mean, but I like, what I do is I go to kind of little church halls in Southeast England and watch people playing free improvised music. That's what turns me on these days. I just listen to improvised, not free jazz, it's improvised music. That's what I play now as well. An old ex R&B player. I don't play R&B anymore. I'm a free improvised musician.
Is S.H. Fernando one of your writers?
No.
You need to get him as a writer. So
we need you to bring many of your
I'll do that.
to RBP.
No, I'll do that. But all right, so I actually have probably met him a million times and I don't remember because that's just the way he writes Skiz. That's his kind of pen name. But he has written a book, The Wu-Tang Saga from the Streets of Shaolin, and I asked him to send it to me because I was really interested. Ben Merlis, your pal Ben Merlis, and our pal Micah Gonzalez have pull quotes on it. All right, I like the Wu-Tang Clan because all white people are legally obligated to like the Wu-Tang Clan, but I am not obsessive about the Wu-Tang Clan.
I like the Wu-Tang Clan.
Do you? Yeah, we're legally obligated. Dipset and the Wu-Tang Clan. We have to like them. This book is... I'm not going to lie. The first 150, 200 pages are set. It's a long book, 150 pages, are pretty much dedicated to the backstory. It is a fascinating look at New York in the 70s, 80s, about the 5%ers, about the whole movement which is a very New York movement, which went directly into hip hop. The research on this. I mean, did you know that Ruth Brown is Rakim's aunt?
No.
Me
That's
neither.
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Did you know that Tom Morello's great uncle was Jomo Kenyatta?
No.
Yeah, I would leave.
Are these facts or alternative facts?
This is
just
researched
to be clear.
So it's a really interesting book, and then it goes into like a track by track of every album, and you can just kind of skip ahead to like the Method stuff and the RZA stuff, and every single soul album. But it really is a fascinating book, and it's fascinating in the sense of the research. And he has a nice little smackdown of a writer, which I'll tell you off camera, which is just really a little tidbit for me. So it's a really good book, and
that sounds great. That sounds
it's really interesting.
We're legally obligated to read it, aren't we?
Do you know that Max Roach is Fab Five Freddy's uncle?
Yes,
I think that's right.
That I did know. But this is just it was just. he just did he's one of the first writers to write about them, and there's just great stuff in there. There's just great. But the 5% stuff, because there's never been like a really seriously in-depth look at their influence, especially on hip hop, and that they were the dominant force behind so many rappers in the 80s and 90s. It's something that was kind of overlooked. And then music wise, I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of Charlotte Gainsbourg. I have no idea why, but I just like her, but I haven't been listening to, Courtney turns me on. I listened to the Silk Sonic record. It's good.
Love that lead track.
Yeah.
I'm not a Bruno Mars fan, so I really just don't care.
Yeah.
I have the album. I have not played it. I just don't care. Right now, I really don't.
Courtney, you do Disdain so beautifully.
No, he
is it Disdain?
He is the Duke of Disdain. Yeah.
Duke of Disdain.
Yes.
It's all too much. I just don't care. But I am caring about this Hard Feelings record, which is so good.
What's that?
It's Joe Goddard of Hot Chip and Amy Douglas, who is a New York City-based singer-songwriter vocalist. Amy wrote Roisin's Something More from Roisin Machine.
Okay.
And they have an album. It's a self-titled album called Hard Feelings. It's Hard Feelings, Hard Feelings. And it is a mixture of like synth pop, house, new wave, and dance, and it is just a solid, really, really good dance album of beats and great lyrics. It's 8 songs and great singing and great production, and I've had it on repeat all week through the weekend. It's really
good. Love Hot Chip. Love a lot of Hot Chip.
It's really good. It's really, this is, Courtney turns me on to the coolest shit. And that I had, kind of, because our musical tastes both mesh and go in disparate directions. And so I'm really grateful for this because, as you know, now that I'm no longer an award-winning journalist, I don't get sent things, and nobody sends you things anyway. So it's cool to discover this stuff.
I've been listening to this other dance house music album that came out in September by a group called Boogie Hill Faders, and it's called The Formula. And that's another good album. So I've just been grooving with those records. And really, I've been listening to, for some reason, I've been going through my Nena Cherry catalog and playing a lot of Nena Cherry.
You never go wrong with that. You never go wrong.
Very much the first album. I mean, I don't think anything she did after that was
I will fight for homebrew. I will fight for homebrew.
I will fight for Man. To me,
and Man, I will fight for those 2 albums.
Great. Now, if you talk about the catchiness, the singles bursting through with the image, the first album is absolutely iconic. Homebrew, I think, is a great record, and I thought that Man really,
Man's a great record.
It's written beautifully, it's sang beautifully. I love, and I like Blank Space. I like the last record she put out, and listen, some of them to varying degrees of success, but I always think that her work is solid. So sometimes I just get in the mood and start digging through her stuff, and then I just go down a K-hole.
She's a really interesting woman. I mean, and I love the way that she's lived through her life up to the sort of current point with a great deal of dignity and so on and so forth. I saw Vivian Goldman put on this thing in this place in East London about 5 years ago about the punky reggae party. It was about how punk and reggae, and it's Vivian on the stage sort of like, doing her stuff.
Vivian doing Vivian.
Vivian doing Vivian. Yeah.
Which was marvelous. Which
the
was
the pop professor.
Yeah.
But Nena was the DJ that night. Her and a woman called Andy Oliver, a pair of them were DJing.
Oh, Andy,
playing just great sort of funk and R&B and all that sort of stuff. And she just beamed. She's behind the turntables and just with bigger smile on her face. So, just someone who just loves stuff like that.
Yeah.
So just adore. So I have an enormous amount of time for her. But, good.
Amy, I got to ask you.
Barney.
You sent an email yesterday.
You sent me an email?
And I'm going to quote this email to you. Remind me to tell you about the first time I met the delightful Ben, friend of the show, Merlis. Well, you've already mentioned Ben. Hint, he was 6. And fun fact, his equally delightful dad, the great Bob Merlis, gave me and my best friend, who was actually a friend of his, tickets to see the Sex Pistols at Winterland hence setting into motion my downward spiral.
That's marvelous.
Now we
So tell us about that.
All right, Courtney, may I? I'll do it very briefly.
Mhm.
All right. So my best friend, who is my best friend forever, I mean, we might as well be married. We are each other's one true love. The most romantic evenings we've ever spent in our lives have been with each other. We love each other. I love her more than pretty much anything. She was friends with Merlis. She knew Merlis back in the day. She knew Merlis just from back then. So when he came to San Francisco with the Sex Pistols in 1978, and she and I went to Mabuhay to meet him, and I was underage. So, I mean, I guess he got me into Mabuhay, and I'd never even been there. And he's like, "Oh, are you going to go to the Sex Pistols show?" And I'm like, "No, of course not. It's been sold out for a minute." And he literally was like, "Bam!" And I was like, "Oh my God, I went to see the Sex." Oh, there's my cat is hiding. I'm very pissed at her. So we saw the Sex Pistols. We went, to the party afterwards where Richard Meltzer was bounced off the stage by Bill Graham because he was just being Richard Meltzer. And it was great. And I pretty much went to my boyfriend's house and was like, "Get all this Steve Miller shit out of the house." And cut my hair and, hilarity. Junkie hijinks ensued from there. Okay.
Hijinks.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Ben. So Candace still remains friend with Merlis, and they used to have this huge party, New Year's Eve party every year, where Swamp Dogg would perform and make Swamp Dogg food, which was great. It was all like the Chosen Jew hipster record company guys. You know what I mean? You know that crew. So we're all down there, and we go to Merlis's house, and he's got this, nice little house, tons of tab because he's obsessed with tab. This is before my son was born, and he brings out one of his kids, and his kid is going to do the old Indian rope trick. So he does the old Indian rope trick, which is, it involved a rope, and he was like 6, and that's how I met Ben. And according to Ben, he did that just for me and Candace to show off. So that's how I know Ben.
Well, I mean, we bookend the Sex Pistols story. I saw about their 4th ever show. They played my art school in London in November 1975. And I mean, I remember it. I saw so many bands around that time, but I've completely forgotten. I have a vivid memory of that show. Viv Albertine was there. She went and formed the Slits. I did fuck all. But Johnny Rotten was on the stage saying, there's only about 40 people. It was empty. It's half empty. There's virtually no one there. And he's saying, "You're all too old. You're all too old." And I was thinking, God, he's right. I am. And then I discovered later he's precisely 1 day older than me. He was born exactly. He's born on the 31st of January. And I was born on the 1st of February, 1956. So we're 1 day apart. But he's saying, "You're all too old. You're all too old." And I remember turning around, and the guy by the mixing desk had his curly hair and his kind of bright, staring eyes. I thought, he's an interesting cove. Of course, that was Malcolm McLaren. It was an interesting evening, but they were pretty terrible. But they weren't great. They weren't
once again, you're using this really weird yardstick to judge music, competency, and quality. I don't know what.
No, you're right. It was a very early gig for a start, so it's not about competence. But I don't think it even got their shit together really.
But didn't it legendarily kind of sound like shit at a lot of shows? Wasn't that kind of the thing?
Well, I don't know. You're absolutely right. The thing is, I'd never seen anything like that before. And when he said, "You're all too old," and I was thinking, yes, I am. It's because I didn't get what they were doing, right? Honestly. And, up to that point, I was really into black music. I was really into funk and so on and so forth. And I loved rock and roll too. And they were a bit of a shock to the system. They really were a shock to the system. But like I said, I really remember that gig. And I can remember so few other shows from around 1975, 76.
I was in high school in 1975.
Well, I'm the oldest person in this virtual room. Do you understand that?
There's a great story in Lenny Kaye's new book about when the Patti Smith group played the Roundhouse in London, which I saw in May 76. And they went on from that. I didn't realize this until I read Lenny's book, which is just out now. So he and I guess Patti, they go to the 100 Club, the famous 100 Club on Oxford Street, where the Pistols are playing that night. And Lenny jumps up on stage towards the end of the Pistols set and plays whatever the last like couple of tracks are, and then goes, and they're doing an encore, and Rotten grabs the mic and says, "Oh, who's been down the roundhouse tonight? Horses, horse shit, hippie horse shit." So he's not only like attacking the Rolling Stones and all the old dinosaurs, he's even like basically lumping Patty and Lenny. Here's the funny thing, actually, Patty and Lenny were both born in like 1946. They're really not a lot younger than like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Bob Dylan.
That's right.
I hadn't quite realized until we were talking to Lenny.
Well, that's right. In the book, he talks about him and Patty in like 1972, and he says, "We are 29." It's like, what? You were 29 in 1972?
Wow,
Jesus Christ!
Yeah. So anyway,
I may have got the details wrong, but that's
roughly right. I think it's roughly right. Makes sense. But anyway, so Downward Spirals, Sex Pistols, Winterland.
Remind me never to email you before we tape anything. Did it ever occur to you, Barney? I've known you for many years that maybe this was a private conversation between friends and I didn't need my shit put out on Front Street like that, but that's okay.
Except
she probably talks about it every episode.
You told this story on the show. So
well, it's true because Ben was there. It was there.
This story,
which is why I figured it. All right.
And you can edit it out. Amy, you can just edit it out.
No.
We keep all it.
We keep it all in.
The things we've edited out is moments where we've had to look at each other after the show's over. We'll call each other and be like, I think when I threatened to kill the president, when she threatened to kill the president on the first show, I was like, I think we should take that out because
Courtney was like, you are a school teacher. Maybe you don't want to be on record saying you'd like the president to die.
This is show number 1.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I think we should. And then I've said some things. I've worked with some people. At one time, I found myself talking a bit too much, and after I was listening back, and I was like, bitch. No, you can't. No,
Popeye.
This has to go. Well, thank you, Mark and Barney.
I am so glad you did. I adore you guys, and we adore that you support us and have really from the beginning. And we love that we're like in the same family together now, the Pantheon family.
We are
and hopefully, inshallah, I can come to England sooner than later and see you guys. We're all boosted up beyond. If I get it at this point, there's no hope. I mean it's like
we are
over boosted.
I'm over boosted.
We've been stuck. We've been plugged.
It's ridiculous.
We've done fucking everything.
I haven't had this many needles in my arm since the 80s. But boom. Okay.
boom. And on that note, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Remember, you guys out there. Remember. You go to Backpages to their website. What's the website address, guys?
rocksbackpages.com.
There you
go. You're gonna have to figure out how to spell that yourself. Just put in Rocks Backpages. It should pop up.
And
enjoy.
And thank you. Follow their podcast. It's on the Pantheon podcast, just like we are. You know where we are every week. You guys follow us. Remember to like, share, do all the good stuff, and we will see you next week.
Stay safe, guys.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's fantasypoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. Fantasypoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.